Kate Mila. Welcome to Irish Granny Helen. I have received quite a few requests to cover this sad story. Um, I really struggled. It's a story it's not just a story, that's why I struggled. This is a tragic disappearance of a young woman with so much promise that became a kind of a parlor game, how to figure out what happened to her. There were exaggerations and rumors and false leads, podcasts, a book, just an unbelievable amount of public attention. And it's a compelling situation. I hesitate to call it a story. It's far more than that. It's a family tragedy. My heart goes out to the family of Maura Murray. And before I even talk about this, I want to get it on the record that I don't do this for the entertainment value. People are interested, and I do believe that a lot of good-hearted people, the majority of people who are interested, are, yes, intrigued because it's such a bizarre mystery. They're attracted to this because Maura Murray was a compelling person. She was talented and large-hearted. She came from a loving family. She was smart. She could have been anyone's child. And I have a theory about true crime stories. And I want to make it clear, I don't consider this just a story, but in the context of talking about it, people, I think, are attracted to the unknown, to mysteries. There's an element, crass as it sounds, of intellectual appeal to trying to figure out a mystery. You have to acknowledge that. But there's a larger phenomenon at hand, I think. People are drawn to true crime, and women are far more interested in it than men statistically. I think it's a subconscious way of dealing with our fears. If we could only understand, if we could only know what happened, then perhaps it won't happen to us. We'll be able to prevent it. And it won't happen to the people that we love. And I think that's what really draws people. All that being said, I decided to honor Maura Murray's memory by putting this out there once again, because there's, as I said, enormous amounts of attention that have been paid. But maybe, just maybe, keeping it in the forefront of people's minds, her family will someday get some answers. And that is what my goal would be. I feel so sorry for them. They have struggled with this unresolved loss for over 20 years now. So let's talk about what happened. And before I start, I'm not an investigator. I'm not a private detective. I am not even an armchair detective, as many people are. So I'm giving a kind of an outline of what happened. There are so many side roads, off ramps, red herrings. There's so much about this story. And I would recommend that if you want to pursue it, go to any podcast provider, any podcast platform, look up her name, and you will find endless interviews, discussions, analyses. One of the earliest podcasts that covered it was a podcast called Missing Maura Murray. And it is exhaustive, and unfortunately, because they followed every single clue and lead and rumor, It often contributed to the false stories and the misapprehensions that people had, but they did move forward to correct a lot of that. So I would say that if you start to read it from the beginning, you'll get a sense of what a huge mystery this is and how difficult it has been to figure it out, and a little feel for what it must be like to be an investigator. You don't know what's a false lead until you get your answers, and you don't get to the answers until you follow all the leads. It is perplexing. Regretfully, Maura's reputation and her family's reputation got dragged through the dirt, through the gutter, and it's not right. Now, there will be a couple of things that I will mention about her life that were problematic, and in no way am I assessing blame on the victim or the victim's family, because I don't think it really had anything to do with it, barely peripherally. But you have to mention it because it is part of the larger picture of what happened to her. So with all of that being said, just to be very clear, I don't consider this lighthearted entertainment. I'm hoping by talking about this, it keeps her memory alive until they are able to figure out what happened to her. And my heart goes out to her family. It's a terrible tragedy. So let's talk about the very mysterious disappearance of Maura Murray, who was born May 4th, 1982 in Brockton, Massachusetts. She disappeared February 9th, 2004. After her car crashed on Route 112 near Woodsville, New Hampshire, which is a village area part of the larger town of Haverhill, which is not big. This is the middle of nowhere. She was a 21-year-old nursing student, a junior at the University of Massachusetts at Amherst. So let's quickly go through a chronology of what happened that day, and then we'll go into a little bit of her family, early life. And as I said, we're not going to linger on a lot of the character assassination and false leads, although some of it peripherally has to be mentioned. I'm not doing this for shock value. So on the afternoon of February 9th, 2004, she sent an email. Now, it's really important to remember early days for the internet in general and pre-smartphone. She sent an email to her professors at school and to her boss at work. She worked on campus, a couple different jobs. She sat at a security desk at a dorm. She had another job, I don't remember. It's been a long time since I listened to the early podcasts. She told them that she was taking a week off because of a death in the family. There was no death in the family. So she had made phone calls, they discovered later, to a condominium up in Bartlett, New Hampshire that she was familiar with from family trips in the past. She made a few other calls, but she did not make reservations anywhere. She excuse me. She did a MapQuest search. Remember MapQuest? I used to download the maps. She did a MapQuest search for the Berkshires in Burlington, New Hampshire. She emailed her boyfriend about 1 o'clock and had to leave a message. She promised to call him later in the day. She just didn't get through to him. I believe he was at West Point. If he had already graduated, it's been a while, as I said, and I'm not an investigator. My memory can be faulty, but she met him at West Point. She was no longer at West Point. We'll get to that. She met him at West Point. If he had graduated, he was in the military. I just don't remember, but he was in another state. That was 1 o'clock. At 1:13, she called a fellow nursing student, and they had an unknown conversation. In 2 o'clock, 5 after 2, she called to get information from a site called Booking Hotels in Stowe, the ski resort, Vermont. And at 2:18, roughly, she called her boyfriend again and left a voicemail. She packed, they know, toiletries, all of her textbooks, and her birth control pills. And already the rumors started to fly, and I would just, why was she taking birth control pills? Because you don't just stop taking them because of your daily activity. You take them on a regular basis. So you don't want to interrupt that in any way. In her dorm room later, they were puzzled to find that most of her belongings were packed up in boxes. Now, this is one of those red herrings, I believe. It later was revealed that school had just started up again. They had been enormously busy. That Amherst nursing school program was just brutal, very time consuming. And the later assumption was not that she had packed up to leave, but that she hadn't unpacked yet. When people left for winter break from Christmas into January, they were required to leave the dorms. They had to pack everything up and leave the dorm. That's what we had to do. I remember that. It was really annoying. So this was unpacked from Christmas break, more than likely. They found an email printout to her boyfriend that hinted at some sort of trouble in the relationship. At 3:30, she left in her 1996 Saturn, which was in terrible shape. She shouldn't have been driving it more than 2 or 3 blocks, and we'll talk about that. At 3:40, she withdrew $280 from an ATM, and there is CCTV footage of her doing it, and she was alone. She left very little money, under $50, I think, in her account. She went to a nearby liquor store and she bought $40 worth of alcohol. She bought a bottle of Bailey's, a bottle of Kahlua, a bottle of vodka, and a box of Franzia wine, which for boxed wine is not bad. She had stopped sometime, and they don't know when, before or after getting these other things. She had stopped to get accident report forms, and she had been in a couple of accidents, and we'll get to that. She was picking them up from the registry of motor vehicles, and the empty forms, the blank forms, were in the back of her car. Between 4 and 5 sometime, she left Amherst on the I-91 north. At 4:37, she checked her voicemail. There's no evidence to be had that she told anyone where she was going or why. After 7 o'clock in Woodsville, New Hampshire, a woman in a home near the road heard a noise outside. Now, you have to picture you're on a rural road, extremely deserted, dark of night, dead of winter, snowy, not falling, but had old snow still on the ground, freezing cold, very, very little traffic, and sparsely populated. This is the middle of nowhere in the woods in New Hampshire. And she hears a bang. And she sees a car in a snowbank on Route 112. She could look out her window and she could see it. The car was facing west, but it was in the eastbound side of the road. So it had crossed over and had gone up on the embankment and hit a tree. So the story goes. She telephoned the Grafton County Sheriff Department at 7:27, and she told 911 that she thought she'd seen a man light a cigarette inside the car. But later, after she had some time to think about it, she realized that what she saw was a red glowing light. She jumped to the conclusion it was a cigarette. She said it could just as easily have been a cell phone or an indicator light of some kind. She never saw another person. At roughly the same time, the school bus driver in the area stopped to offer help to a cold and shivering young woman standing outside the car. Now, this school bus driver lived right beside where this accident happened, and rural area. He was supposed to bring the bus home every night after he dropped everybody off, and he parked it outside his house. That was routine. So he offered for her that he would call 911. And she told him, oh, no, don't do that. That's okay. I don't need 911. I've called AAA and they'll be here soon. And he knew right away she was lying because there was no cell coverage in that area. He knew she could not have called anybody, and there is no AAA record of any call. At 7:43, he went into his house and he called the sheriff. And while he was calling, he was looking out the window at her car, and he saw several cars drive by. And one of them was an eyewitness who was driving home. And she says that she saw a police SUV nose to nose with Murray's car at 7:37. 7:37, if everyone's clocks were correct and synced, would be about 6 minutes before the bus driver called the sheriff. This eyewitness claims she saw a cop car nose to nose. And she saw nobody. The car, they were both up, stopped and empty, and she saw no people. Police logs say that the police from Haverhill were there at 7:46. Now, 7:46 would be 3 minutes after the bus driver called the sheriff. It's not the sheriff. This is the Haverhill police. And it would have been 9 minutes after the eyewitness claims she saw a cop car. No driver, no woman, no man in the car, no cigarette smoker, no cop. The assumption was that the car hit the tree on the driver's side. The windshield was cracked on the driver's side above the steering wheel, and the airbags were on. The car was locked. They noticed, the police did, that there were red stains like wine inside the car, like up on the ceiling, like boom, and like that, and outside the car, like somebody had poured it. And there was an empty beer bottle inside the car. There was a damaged box of Franzia on the rear seat. They went through the car because they didn't know who it belonged to. They found a AAA card made out to Maura Murray. They found the blank accident forms. They found a pair of gloves, some music CDs. They found makeup, some diamond jewelry, the MapQuest driving directions to Burlington, her favorite stuffed animal, and a book on mountain climbing that she really liked and was kind of a family Bible. They were real outdoorsy. They found no credit cards and no telephone, and some of the alcohol that they knew she'd bought because of the receipt, some of the alcohol was missing. A summary appeared in the Quincy, Massachusetts Patriot Ledger. This is the local small paper, and they every week or so, maybe every day, they did a police ledger. They used to do that here. They don't do that anymore. So, quote, at a hairpin turn, she went off the road. Her car hit a tree. At that point, a person came along who was driving a bus. It was a neighbor, and he asked if she needed help. She refused. About 10 minutes later, the police showed up to the scene, and Maura Murray was gone. So they treated this as a missing person and possibly a voluntarily missing person. And they thought that the travel plans made it suspicious of in some way. And they did not see signs of foul play. So this happened in 2004. In 2005, this became a cold case, and they reclassified it as a suspicious missing person. They did not treat it as a criminal situation. So just before 8 p.m., the EMS and the fire trucks arrived. At 8:49, the car was towed, and they discovered in the process of hooking it up to tow it that there was a rag in the muffler pipe. Now, we'll talk a little bit more about the condition of the car. It was really bad, but so much smoke had been coming out of the back of the car because it was in such terrible shape. Her father told her, look, you're going to get pulled over and you're going to get fined. Now, they were working on getting her a new car. This was not trying to avoid buying a new car. This was trying to keep her out of trouble till they found one. They'd been looking. He said, if you put a rag in the pipe, it'll hide the smoke. At 9:30, the police left. The car was gone. The police left. That was the end of the scene. 3 months later, a report was filed that a contractor who had been driving home saw a young person on foot going east on Route 112, 4 to 5 miles east of the accident. Now, he had been driving home, and it didn't even dawn on him. He didn't associate the report of the missing young woman and this person that he had seen. He had known that there was anybody missing. He saw somebody in jeans and a dark coat with a light hood moving very fast on foot. At the time, as I said, he had no idea that she was missing. But 3 months later, he had eventually heard about it. And 3 months later, while he was looking at his work records, he realized, oh, that's the same night I was in that area and I saw that person. So he called the police and made a report. So we'll talk about the investigation. Between February and June of 2004, we'll start. February 10th of 2004, they put a be on the lookout announcement over the police radio, and the family was told. February 11th, her father, Fred, got to Haverhill. At 8 o'clock in the morning, the New Hampshire Fish and Game and family and friends started a search. They searched with dogs. They tracked her scent 100 yards east in the road, past the car, 100 yards past the car, and then the dogs abruptly lost the scent. And the cops said, this looks like she got picked up by another car. February 11th at 5 p.m., her boyfriend and his parents arrived. Now, they're from out of state. They were interrogated separately and together by the police, and the police said that this was either a runaway or a plan for self-harm, but nobody who knew her believed that. Nobody believed it. While the boyfriend was flying to the scene, he had his phone turned off. When he got off the plane, he discovered that a voicemail had been left. When he listened to it, he said it sounded like Maura sobbing, and that was it, crying and then a hang up. And they found that the call had been charged to a calling card belonging to the American Red Cross. So on the evening of February 12th, they held their first press conference. And on February 13th was the first newspaper and media coverage. The police said she was endangered and that possible self-harm was involved. They did not treat it as anything criminal, did not start a criminal investigation. The police believed she was intoxicated at the car, that she had left because that she didn't want to get arrested for being drunk driving. But the bus driver said she didn't seem inebriated at all. She seemed shaken by the accident and she was cold, but not at all in any indication of being drunk. A week later, her father and her boyfriend appeared on CNN. And the family, they were the first ones to expand a search to Vermont. The police didn't even bother. Never mind, she had all this map stuff and phone calls about Vermont and resorts, condos, Stowe, They didn't ever follow up on it. 10 days after her disappearance, the FBI was brought in and a ground search, an air search with helicopters, New Hampshire Fish and Games, tracking dogs, cadaver dogs, and thermal imaging. That search was conducted. Her family was involved in the search, and one of her sisters found underwear on a trail, but DNA proved it wasn't hers. At the end of February, the family was given her stuff by the police department in a box. March 2nd, after being there all that time, they went home. There was no place else that they had to go back to work. There was no place else to search. I can't imagine what that trip home was like. Her father, now this man, you would hope that somebody loved you the way this man loved his daughter. He returned to search for her every weekend that it wasn't buried in feet and feet of snow for years. His entire life, when he wasn't at work, because he worked, he was up there searching for his daughter. In April, one of the landowners around the site of where the accident had been complained to the police about him trespassing on their property. Not that there was a home, but it was empty land. In March of 2004, so this would have been a couple of weeks after, maybe 3 weeks after Maura disappeared, a young woman named Brianna Maitland disappeared, which we might have to talk about in more detail. If you guys are interested, let me know. Her car was found crashed into a barn along the road. Now, this was about, if I remember correctly, 30 miles, a little bit more than that, from where Maura disappeared. And there are photographs online, and you can see she had a big old car and was sticking out of the side of the barn. The police said, oh, there's no link. People talked a lot about, oh, God, do we have some kind of serial killer going on? And the police denied any possibility. They said there was no evidence of a crime. And they said Maura Murray probably got picked up. She took a ride and went to her final destination that she had planned on going to when she was doing her map quests and stuff. Between July 2004 and December 2005, the investigation went like this. July 1st, the cops took back all of her personal stuff from the family to test. So they returned it to the family without adequate testing. I won't say no testing, but apparently they realized, whoops. July 13th, they did a 1-mile radius search with 100 searchers and volunteers and the family. And this is the 4th search. The reason why it was so late was because of snow. This was the first search made without snow on the ground. And they hoped to find her backpack that she put in the car. I guess maybe they saw video of her with the backpack, either at the liquor store or the ATM. They know she had a backpack with her, a black backpack, and it wasn't in the car. In late 2004, her father was given a knife by the brother of a guy from the area who had a criminal past. So the brother of the bad guy gave the knife to her father, Fred. This guy claimed that his brother and the brother's girlfriend acted very strangely after the Murray crash, and he feared the knife had been used on. The brother got rid of his car, his Volvo, almost immediately after her disappearance. Other family members, though, they said the brother doing the reporting, the brother giving the father the knife, he wanted the reward money. He was a drug user and he was hoping to get the reward. In 2004, Fred, the father, went on Montel Williams to plead for his daughter. And in 2005, he petitioned the New Hampshire governor for help. In February 9th of 2005, there was a service at the site of her disappearance, and then the father met with the New Hampshire governor. Now, this is not the governor he petitioned. The governor's changed in January. Beginning of January, he petitioned the old governor, and then in the next month, the new governor. He met with the new governor. Late in 2005, her father sued the cops to get access to the files on the case. November 1st, 2005, there was a report of a sighting of a black backpack in a restroom at an overlook 30 miles from the crash. The cops said, oh, we were aware of that, and then they wouldn't talk about it. So we don't know. Between 2006 and 2010, the New Hampshire League of Investigators, this is a group of 10 retired police, and the Molly Bish Foundation. Molly Bish was a young woman who disappeared while lifeguarding at a lake. They began to investigate the case. Tom Snamshak, a former police chief and licensed private investigator from Massachusetts, said this: it appears that this is something beyond a mere missing persons case. Something ominous could have happened here. In 2006, they organized a 2-day search with volunteers. In 2007, a reward of $75,000 was posted and a campaign begun. Let's Bring Them Home was the name of the group that did this. Then there was this, a closet inside an A-frame house 1 mile from the crash. Was once the house of the guy with the knife. And they finally got permission to search the area with cadaver dogs, and the dogs went bonkers on this closet. They got permission to take up pieces of carpet and pieces of the paneling inside the closet. That was given to the New Hampshire State Police, and the results were not released. July of 2008, another 2-day search was made of the Haverhill Woods with dogs and the private investigators. 2009, a call went out for the creation of a cold case in New Hampshire. It was created, and in 2010, Maura Murray's case was given to the cold case. In 2010, her father went public as very critical of the cops for calling it just a missing person and not doing a criminal investigation. So 2011 until today. In 2014, it was the 10th anniversary. There have been no credible sightings ever. Now, there has been rumor that, oh, she went to Canada, or she was in Quebec, and there's nothing credible about any of this. Her father believed that she was abducted that night from the road and that she's dead. February 9th, 2017, the Boston Globe called it an open case with periods of activity, and at times it goes dormant, but there are no new updates. February 15th of 2019, her father said that he believed that the blood in the A-frame belonged to Maura, blood in the closet. The police will not release the information. So we don't know. This is just what her father said. April of 2019, they did a basement excavation. Eventually, they were able to get permission, and they went into the basement of this house because there was rumor of freshly poured cement at one point. They found nothing. In 2021, the tree at the site where the crash occurred was cut down. It had become a bit of a shrine. It had a ribbon around it. People left balloons. People would go there that were curious. They would have memorials there. And the owner of the property was not having it, and they cut the tree down. The family requested that New Hampshire make the area, put up an historical marker, but that was rejected. On November 21st, in November of 2021, bones were found on Loon Mountain in New Hampshire, but eventually proven to not be Maura's. January of 2022, the FBI put out a national alert for her. VICAP, that is a national storing house of information, they created a multiple sharing thing of information about her case. In July of 2022, they searched in a landfill in Easton, New Hampshire. No explanation. February 2024, the 20th anniversary, they released an age progression, where they use computers to make your face look what it should look like now. This case was significant because of the timing of it. It's called the first crime mystery of the social media age. And absolutely, the internet and social media really had an effect on getting people to know about it, on bringing out the trolls and the lunatics, creating suspicions about people that may never have been even considered until they started putting themselves into the investigation. The day she disappeared, Facebook was 5 days old. So that gives you some idea. And I thought this was an interesting way of putting it. Her case is a parable of online sleuthing. It's become an obsession for many people. And like I said earlier, the sad disappearance and no answers. It's just a tragedy for a family. But it can't be denied that it's a mystery, that people are drawn to mysteries. It's not that everybody who pays attention to it is an ogre or creepy. There's something, it's like a vacuum, nature abhors a vacuum. A lot of people abhor a mystery, not knowing the answers. So I wrote this down. I forget what I wrote. So here we go. I said, I don't want to contribute to the sadness, but her family still has no answers. And the case does emphasize the good and the bad of social media. That's for sure. I talked about the podcasts that created controversies and red herrings and opportunities for nuts to get attention. And it's been a horrible emotional and psychological roller coaster for her family. And there was character assassination. There have been shows and documentaries, endless crime show episodes, and a book. Let's talk a little bit about her background, just so you get a sense of who she was. She's from a Roman Catholic family, Irish background, 4 children. She had a brother, Fred, and a sister, Kathy, and a sister, Julie, and a half-brother, Kurt. One of the big shocks was this half-brother. Her mother got pregnant from an affair. The family stayed together. The father welcomed this infant, and he was her brother. She was a star high school athlete. She was a runner. She and her sister were long-distance runners, and they won everything. They were just phenomenal. She went to West Point. Her sister was already at West Point, and Maura became a chemical engineering major. That sounds like fun. For 3 months. Her sister loved West Point. Her sister loved the order, the predictability, the stand. Her sister just loved everything about it. Maura, not so much. And I think now this is my opinion. I think she felt stuck. She didn't want to embarrass her family or disappoint them. And I think she wanted out of West Point. She ended up transferring to the University of Massachusetts Nursing School in Amherst. But how she left West Point is controversial, and it really turned into character assassination. I believe it was a cry for help. She got caught shoplifting like a very inexpensive tiny bit of some kind of makeup thing from a gift shop at Fort Knox. And West Point doesn't tolerate that. I think she was given the option, quit or get kicked out. And I think these were cries for help. I think she was really unhappy. And I think she had unaddressed issues beyond just the school. You know, she seemed to be a little, I'm not diagnosing anything, but if I remember correctly, people mentioned she had a very high standards for herself, a bit of a perfectionist. She left West Point, and now she's a junior at Amherst and was doing very well. People really liked her, and she did very well, and she was in intramural sports. And then another bad thing happened. She found a receipt in a trash can in the dormitory for something somebody ordered. And it was a credit card receipt. And the credit card number was on it. And she used it to order pizza. And she got caught. She was in trouble. She got a citation. They didn't haul her off. They gave her a citation, and she was going to have to go to court. She was finally told that the whole thing would be resolved, that it would be dismissed. First, it was delayed, and then the decision was made, okay, we're going to dismiss this if you behave yourself for 3 months. Within that time, she disappeared. They told her it'll be dismissed at the end of 3 months if you don't get into any more trouble. I think this is significant. She had a meltdown at work right before she disappeared. She had a conversation on the phone with her sister, and she was so upset that her boss had to walk her back to the dorm. And it was later revealed her sister, with whom she spoke, said, I had just gotten out of rehab. Her sister had an alcohol problem, had just gotten out of rehab, and my husband picked me up at rehab and drove me to a liquor store, and I've been drinking. And Maura just fell apart about that. So we mentioned that her car was a rattle-trap piece of garbage, and her father was really worried about her safety. And so he told her, look, I'm going to come down on the weekend, and we will find a car for you. So he came down, got a hotel room, and they went car shopping. And they realized they were going to need a little bit more cash than what they had on hand, that if you really wanted to get a decent car, you have to get maybe a couple $1,000, $1,000 more. So they said, look, he said to her, let's do this next weekend. And she said, Dad, can I borrow your car? He had a brand new car. And he said yes. And so she took the car. She went to a party, and this party remains a big unknown, what happened at the party. But apparently, rumor has it that she probably was drinking at the party. And on the way home, this would be February 7th of 2004, she got in an accident in the car, and she hit a guardrail. She came to a T intersection, and the guardrail across here, she hit it. And kind of wrecked her dad's car. The police came, but they didn't do a sobriety test. It's very interesting, that. Her father was pretty sanguine about it. She was quite upset. But he said, look, I'm insured. Don't worry about it. And he later found out that insurance was going to cover it. So he wasn't too upset about it. He was more concerned about her. And he told her, look, I'll help you fill out the accident reports. You go get accident reports. I'll help you fill them out. That's why there were accident reports in the back of the car. So he went back home. She went up. There was a snowstorm. Classes were canceled. And February 9th happened and she disappeared. And this year it's been 21 years. And that's the very sad story of Maura Murray. And I'm going to reiterate, my heart goes out to her family. Her sister, Kathy, has subsequently died. Her boyfriend got married, moved on. Her father continues to look for her. I don't think he goes every single weekend anymore because he's slowing down. I think he's in his 80s. Her aunt, who ran the family part of the investigation, kept track of everything, did all of the internet stuff. Her aunt has died. Her mother has died. Yeah, it's just really sad. So I just want to end this by saying my heart goes out to that family. And for their sake, I hope they get some sort of resolution. It will never be the same. She will always be missing. They will always grieve for her. But if they just knew. So thank you for watching. And I'll be looking into this more with Deborah. And you will find that on Substack soon. Not tomorrow, but eventually. Keep your eye open. And thanks. Slongafoil. Sluncha.